The woman literally shrieked, "That belongs to my son," while pointing at my freshly restored 1870s log cabin, a cabin I'd legally purchased, fully documented, cash in hand. Picture this. I'm running my palm across century-old hand-hewn beams, breathing in that sweet scent of oiled cedar, when Belinda Stockworth comes marching across my property line. Her heels click against my new porch boards like a machine gun as she waves crumpled papers in my face. "My Bradley deserves this inheritance," she screams, her shrill voice cutting through the mountain air. Here's what burns me up. I bought this place fair and square at a county auction. Complete legal sale, proper deed, zero complications. But Belinda? She had the HOA board in her back pocket and 2 decades of crushing neighbors who dared challenge her authority. What she didn't know was that I just discovered something in the cabin's hidden cellar that would destroy her lies completely. What would you do if your dream project became someone else's family inheritance overnight? Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether your HOA has ever tried something this outrageous. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name's Garrett Thornfield, and 6 months ago, I was a burned-out software consultant going through the world's messiest divorce in Portland. You know that feeling when life hits you like a freight train carrying your ex-wife's lawyer bills? Yeah, that was me. My grandfather had been a carpenter, one of those old-school craftsmen who could make magic with nothing but hand tools and patience. When he passed, he left me a modest inheritance and some advice. Good work takes time, son. Measure twice, cut once, and never let bullies push you around. So when I found this listing, historic 1870s cabin, 2.3 acres, needs restoration, $85,000, something clicked. The photos showed hand-hewn Douglas fir beams sitting on original stone foundation, located in Pinewood Estates, a gated community of 47 homes in the Washington Mountains. The seller was the county. The previous owner, elderly recluse Edwin Holbrook, had died without a will. No family, no heirs, just this piece of history sitting empty while lawyers sorted probate. I drove up on a foggy morning, and the scent of pine needles mixed with damp earth hit me like nature's antidepressant. The cabin sat on a gentle slope, surrounded by evergreens that had probably witnessed the Civil War. When I ran my palm along those massive logs, I could feel generations of craftsmanship in every hand-cut joint. The county auction was straightforward. A few contractors showed up, saw the work involved, and bailed. Me? I saw therapy with a roof, made the winning bid and walked out with a deed, rusty keys, and the biggest project of my life. First few weeks were pure bliss. Stripping old chinking, treating logs, discovering the stone foundation was solid as my ex-wife's prenup demands. That's when I found the hidden root cellar beneath kitchen floorboards, original storage carved into bedrock. And there, wrapped in oilcloth behind a loose stone, sat Edwin Holbrook's leather journal. Pages yellowed but readable, documenting mountain life in neat handwriting. Most entries were mundane, weather, repairs, wildlife observations, but scattered throughout were references to BS, and those entries told a darker story about lies, cheating, and stolen lumber deals. Enter Belinda Stockworth, HOA president, community tyrant, and owner of the biggest McMansion in Pinewood Estates. Picture a 800-square-foot monument to suburban excess, complete with manicured lawn that probably required a NASA irrigation system. She lived there with Donald, a retired bank VP, and their 28-year-old son, Bradley, unemployed and apparently making it his life's work. Week 3 of restoration. The crunch of gravel announced Belinda's BMW like an air raid siren. She emerged wearing a business suit that cost more than my tool budget, clipboard ready for battle. "You're the new owner." Not a question, an indictment. Garrett Thornfield. I extended my hand. She examined it like evidence at a crime scene. "We need to discuss your permit violations." I blinked. "Ma'am, I have county permits. Building department said HOA approval wasn't needed for restoration." Her smile could have frozen hellfire. "Mr. Thornfield, you don't understand Pinewood Estates? This community has standards." Then came the bombshell that changed everything. Edwin Holbrook was my late husband's business partner back in the 60s. They had an understanding. This property would stay in the family. My son Bradley has moral rights to this cabin. The audacity hit me like the smell of her overpowering floral perfume mixing with fresh sawdust. She actually believed her sob story gave her legal claim to my property. "You bought stolen goods," she continued, voice rising. "I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing. Sell to Bradley for what you paid, $85,000. No profit from our family's loss." When I politely declined, her mask slipped completely. "Then you'll face the consequences. Work stops immediately pending architectural review. $500 daily fines until compliance. And if you fight me, there are lawyers who specialize in removing problematic residents. Standing there listening to this woman threaten my legal project while claiming imaginary inheritance rights, I realized my peaceful mountain retreat had just become a battlefield. Belinda wasted no time turning her threats into action. 3 days after our little chat, I found a certified letter in my mailbox that made my morning coffee taste like battery acid. Notice of architectural review violation stamped across the top in aggressive red letters. Apparently she'd created something called the Heritage Preservation Committee, which, I quickly discovered, consisted of exactly 3 people: Belinda, her sister-in-law Carol, and her neighbor, Mrs. Hendricks, whose main qualifications seemed to be nodding enthusiastically whenever Belinda spoke. The violation report was 14 pages of pure bureaucratic terrorism. My crimes against humanity? Installing modern electrical outlets instead of keeping the original knob and tube wiring that could have turned my cabin into the world's most expensive campfire. Updating plumbing so I wouldn't need an outhouse in January. And my personal favorite, adding non-period LED lighting instead of, I guess, kerosene lanterns and the constant threat of carbon monoxide poisoning. The irony burned worse than the smell of Belinda's cigarettes drifting across my property line. Her McMansion had a hot tub, granite countertops, and enough outdoor lighting to guide aircraft, but somehow my historically accurate restoration was destroying community character. So I did what any sane person would do. I fought back with research. That weekend at the County Historical Society, a librarian named Margaret helped me uncover gold. Original 1870s photographs of my cabin, county records proving no HOA existed when it was built, and documentation showing my restoration matched historical accuracy better than anything else in Pinewood Estates. But Edwin's journal provided the real ammunition. Those mysterious BS references started clicking into place when I read this entry from 1968. BS tried another scheme today. Caught him selling our lumber to his side customers while claiming equipment failures delayed our shipments. Man's got no conscience. Good thing I document everything, including the insurance papers he thinks nobody knows about. The musty scent of old leather and aged paper mixed with my wood stain that evening as the pieces fell together. Billy Stockworth, Belinda's late husband, had been running scams on their business partnership for years. Edwin kept evidence, and Belinda was scared to death of what else might surface from the cabin's hidden spaces. That's when Ruby Castellanos made her move. This tough-as-nails neighbor shuffled over during my evening cleanup, her practical shoes crunching on gravel as she glanced around like a Cold War spy. "Son, you're walking into a tiger trap," she whispered. "That woman's got more schemes than a carnival con artist." Ruby broke down Belinda's playbook: manufacture violations, apply pressure, force below-market sales to family and friends. Previous victims included a teacher driven out over fake pool violations and a veteran harassed because his memorial flag supposedly violated aesthetic standards. "She controls the board through relatives and bribes," Ruby explained. "Been running this place like Stalin ran Russia." I remembered something from my divorce lawyer, property rights law I'd researched when my ex tried claiming ownership of my grandfather's tools. Turns out HOAs can't retroactively enforce architectural standards on existing structures. Something called grandfather clauses protect legitimate property improvements. The legal principle is simple. You can't manufacture rules just to harass people you don't like. Meanwhile, Belinda's psychological warfare intensified. Daily inspections, where she photographed every nail and screw from my property line. Fake noise complaints during legal construction hours. Anonymous flyers warning neighbors about outside agitators threatening property values. The strangest part? Watching her performance from my porch each evening, she'd march around taking pictures with the intensity of a documentary filmmaker, occasionally talking to herself and gesturing at my perfectly legal restoration work like it was evidence of war crimes. Then Marcus and Diana Price approached me, the young couple 3 houses down who looked like they'd been through Belinda's torture chamber. "We're next," Marcus admitted, nervously checking over his shoulder. "Pool permit irregularities and fence height violations. We wanted you to know, some of us see what she's really doing." The final escalation came on a Thursday when Belinda arrived with 2 board members during my cellar cleaning. I was simply removing 150 years of accumulated debris when she started shrieking about unauthorized excavation. "You're violating county ordinances," she announced, demanding immediate access for inspection. But here's where Edwin's journal had taught me something crucial about dealing with bullies. Document everything, stay calm, and never give them ammunition. My grandfather's advice echoed in my mind. Measure twice, cut once, and never let anyone push you around on your own property. Ma'am, I said, keeping my voice level while my blood pressure spiked, I'm cleaning an existing space. No excavation, no permits required, and definitely no unauthorized access to my private property. The look that flashed across her face told me everything. This wasn't about regulations or community standards. This was about control, and she was absolutely furious that her usual intimidation tactics weren't working. That's when I realized something that changed everything. Belinda had been winning these battles for years because nobody ever fought back properly. But I wasn't just anybody. I was a man with nothing left to lose and a growing pile of evidence that would make her very, very sorry she'd picked this fight. Belinda's next move hit me where it hurt most, my wallet and my timeline. Monday morning brought County Building Inspector Jake Morrison, clipboard ready and apologetic grimace in place. Sorry about this, Mr. Thornfield, he said, genuinely uncomfortable. Formal complaint about unauthorized foundation work. Someone claims you're doing structural modifications without permits. Pure fiction. I was cleaning existing space, not digging new foundation. But county regulations required full reinspection, stopping my work for 2 weeks while paperwork crawled through bureaucracy slower than Bradley looking for employment. The delay triggered Belinda's rumor campaign. Suddenly neighbors whispered about my finances, questioning whether I could afford proper permits or was cutting corners to save money. The sweet mountain air carried gossip faster than pollen in springtime. But my messy divorce had taught me something valuable about fighting dirty opponents. Hire professionals who know the rules. Sarah Jules specialized in HOA harassment cases, and her consultation revealed beautiful truth. Belinda's legal position was weaker than wet tissue paper. She's operating on intimidation and bluff, Sarah explained while reviewing my documentation. Keep photographing everything, file counter-complaints with the State Oversight Board, and let her mistakes accumulate. In property law, the person with better records usually wins. I'd learned that lesson the hard way during divorce proceedings when my ex-wife's lawyer tried claiming ownership of my grandfather's workshop tools. Meticulous documentation saved me thousands. Receipts, photos, witness statements, everything time-stamped and organized. Now I applied the same strategy to Belinda's harassment campaign. Requesting official HOA meeting minutes revealed suspicious gaps during every forced property sale. Lost documents whenever someone questioned board authority. Financial records showing Heritage Fund expenditures to family members' businesses. The pattern was clearer than mountain air after rainfall. Then I caught Bradley red-handed. Thursday afternoon, returning from the lumberyard, I found him casually strolling around my cabin like he was conducting a real estate appraisal. Gravel crunched under his designer sneakers as he tried acting innocent. Just checking out my future property, he said with the smug entitlement of someone who'd never earned anything. But here's the twist that changed everything. Bradley had keys. Not just casual trespassing, but actual access to my property. When I demanded explanation, his response revealed the depth of their delusion. Mom gave them to me. Said the previous owner left them with the HOA for emergencies. And since this is rightfully family property anyway. The audacity was breathtaking, but also legally actionable. HOAs don't hold emergency keys to private property. That's called breaking and entering when you're not the owner. Belinda had apparently convinced her son that imaginary inheritance rights included actual access privileges. Edwin's journal was revealing more secrets nightly. Reading by restored oil lamp in my cabin, I discovered Billy Stockworth's insurance scam from 1967. Equipment failures that delayed lumber deliveries while Billy sold inventory to private customers. Edwin documented everything, including references to insurance papers hidden in foundation stones where Billy's greed can't find them. That phrase echoed as I continued cellar restoration. Insurance papers, hidden in foundation stones. My grandfather always said mountain folks were clever about protecting important documents, and suddenly I knew exactly where to look. Meanwhile, Belinda orchestrated an emergency HOA meeting with Soviet-level control. Invitations to supporters only, deliberately excluding opposition voices. The agenda targeted my restoration specifically with retroactive architectural guidelines and created a heritage fund for legal action against disruptive residents. Public records revealed the Heritage Fund's creative accounting, legal fees to Belinda's cousin's bargain law practice, consulting fees to her sister-in-law's non-existent business, heritage research expenses matching Bradley's car payments exactly. The smell of financial corruption was stronger than fresh paint fumes. Pete Kowalski from the lumberyard provided crucial context about the family's history. Edwin Holbrook, honest, respected, meticulous record keeper, Billy Stockworth, reputation for flexible contract interpretations and creative invoicing schemes. Your lady's been poisoning the well against honest contractors for 20 years, Pete said, offering materials at cost. About time someone fought back properly. The escalation peaked with systematic vandalism. Friday morning revealed broken windows, scattered tools, and spray paint across my restored logs. The chemical smell of aerosol paint violated the clean mountain air like a slap in nature's face. No forced entry. Whoever did this had keys and intimate property knowledge. An anonymous note under my windshield made the threat explicit. Leave now, or worse, happens next. But Marcus Price's IT security background had anticipated this move. Hidden cameras captured everything, Bradley using keys to enter, methodical destruction designed to look random, and most damning, a phone call to his mother. Just mess things up like you said. Make it look like break-in, nothing too obvious. Audio evidence of conspiracy between mother and son, video proof of breaking and entering, documentation of systematic harassment. When the sheriff's deputy took my report, I wasn't worried about prosecution delays. I was building an airtight case for Belinda's complete destruction. Even her supporters looked uncomfortable after the vandalism. Ruby condemned it publicly, and several neighbors privately expressed disgust. But Belinda doubled down with characteristic delusion, blaming me for attracting criminal elements through aggressive restoration tactics. Standing in my vandalized cabin that evening, reading her demand for emergency community vote about my threat to neighborhood safety, I realized something crucial. She wasn't just entitled or controlling. She was genuinely unhinged. And unhinged people always make fatal errors. Belinda's desperation peaked with a legal threat so ridiculous it belonged in a comedy sketch. Her cut-rate attorney cousin served me with a cease and desist claiming my restoration violated a historical preservation easement that existed only in their imagination. The demand was breathtaking. $25,000 restoration bond pending resolution, plus immediate cessation of all work. The expensive legal paper crinkled in my hands as I read 6 pages of creative fiction, masquerading as law, accompanied by threats of asset seizure that would have made loan sharks blush. Sarah Jules's reaction was priceless. "This is like being sued by someone claiming they own the moon," she laughed, dissecting the bogus claims. His law license must be held together with duct tape and desperation. But while Sarah prepared our counterattack, I was solving Edwin's puzzle about hidden insurance papers. Following his journal clues, I'd been examining foundation stones systematically. Wednesday afternoon, alone in the cellar with just my flashlight, I discovered a deliberately loose stone near the eastern wall. What I found inside changed everything. Insurance documents from 1967 showing Billy Stockworth had claimed a mill fire destroyed premium-grade lumber inventory. The exact same lumber Edwin's journal documented Billy selling privately weeks before the accident. Not just business disputes, but actual insurance fraud worth thousands in 1960s money. The evidence was 50 years old and legally expired, but it proved Edwin's character assessment was spot on. More importantly, it explained why Belinda was so terrified of what else might surface from the cabin's hidden spaces. Then Bradley's harassment campaign went mobile. He started appearing at Murphy's coffee shop where I worked remotely, conducting loud phone conversations about family property being stolen by corporate raiders. His performance was theater-quality tragedy, wounded son fighting for heritage against heartless outsider. The barista, a college kid named Tyler, eventually approached me with barely contained amusement. "Dude, that guy's been practicing his sob story in the mirror. He keeps using the exact same phrases and dramatic pauses." Bradley's social media campaign was equally pathetic. Help Bradley Reclaim Family Heritage featured carefully staged photos of him looking mournful outside my property. The comment section revealed Belinda's digital puppetry, multiple accounts with suspiciously identical grammar mistakes, all expressing outrage about greedy developers. But Belinda's most desperate move targeted my personal history. She somehow obtained my ex-wife's contact information and conducted a fishing expedition that backfired spectacularly. Jennifer called that evening, voice mixing curiosity with indignation. "Some crazy woman from Washington spent 20 minutes asking about your mental health, drinking habits, and potential for violence. Wanted ammunition for some kind of harassment campaign?" During our divorce, I'd learned about evidence gathering the hard way. Document everything because desperate people will twist any information available. That knowledge had saved me thousands when Jennifer's lawyer tried claiming I was financially irresponsible. "I told her you were stubborn and obsessed with old tools, but violent and unstable weren't in your repertoire," Jennifer continued. Then I asked why strangers were investigating my ex-husband's background. She hung up pretty fast. Sarah's deeper investigation revealed the HOA's foundation was built on quicksand. They'd been operating illegally for 2 years, required state filings never submitted, making every vote meaningless. The Heritage Fund contained $12,000 with accounting records that would embarrass a lemonade stand. In nonprofit law, this is called operating without legal authority, Sarah explained. Every fine they've imposed, every violation notice they've issued, completely unenforceable because they're not legally an HOA anymore. Marcus's enhanced security system was documenting Belinda's escalating desperation beautifully. 47 separate harassment incidents, each time-stamped and archived. Bradley's attempted break-ins now clearly part of organized conspiracy, not random mischief. The climax came when Belinda staged her most elaborate deception, a fake gas emergency requiring immediate property inspection. She arrived with Bradley and 2 board members as witnesses, carrying a device that beeped frantically near my foundation. "Critical safety situation," she announced with genuine-sounding concern. "Multiple neighbors reported gas odors. We need immediate access for professional assessment." But software debugging had taught me to question obvious explanations and trace actual sources. The gas detector beeping hysterically turned out to be a smoke alarm with dying battery. The multiple neighbors who reported leaks didn't exist according to county emergency dispatch. Hidden cameras captured Belinda's evidence-planting attempt during the staged inspection. Audio recorded her coaching Bradley. "Place those violation tags on the electrical outlets while I distract him. Make it look like we discovered code problems during emergency response." When Deputy Rodriguez arrived, Sarah's brilliant prearrangement based on anticipated escalation, Belinda was literally red-handed, placing fabricated violation markers on perfectly legal installations. "Ma'am," the deputy said while his body camera recorded everything, "we need to discuss filing false emergency reports and attempted fraud." Ruby's Facebook livestream captured the entire performance for community consumption. Comments exploded with neighbors expressing shock, disgust, and finally understanding Belinda's methodology. Even her remaining supporters abandoned ship faster than rats fleeing a sinking vessel. The evidence planting constituted criminal activity beyond HOA harassment. Multiple agencies launched investigations while Belinda's authority evaporated like mountain mist in morning sunshine. Standing on my porch that evening, watching the deputy's taillights fade into darkness, I understood the war was nearly over. Belinda had transformed from feared neighborhood tyrant into desperate criminal whose schemes were unraveling faster than a cheap sweater in a washing machine. Sarah Jules's phone call Tuesday morning made my coffee taste like victory. Her voice practically vibrated with excitement as she described documents that obliterated Belinda's entire charade. "I found the smoking gun," she said. "Original 1960s partnership dissolution papers with Billy Stockworth's signature abandoning all future claims to Holbrook properties. Your cabin and 2.3 acres are specifically mentioned in the legal waiver." The sweet irony made my head spin. Belinda had spent months screaming about family inheritance rights to property her own husband had legally forfeited 60 years ago. Her entire crusade was built on lies she'd probably convinced herself were true through sheer repetition. But the state HOA Oversight Board's audit delivered the knockout punch. The Heritage Fund investigation revealed $8,000 in unauthorized transfers to Stockworth family accounts. Bradley's car payments disguised as legal consulting, their Hawaii vacation labeled heritage research, even Donald's country club membership filed under community outreach expenses. "This crosses from civil harassment into criminal embezzlement," Sarah explained, spreading evidence across my kitchen table where morning light streaming through restored windows illuminated our treasure trove. Felony charges carrying 5 to 10 years prison time. The scent of fresh wood polish mixed with the musty smell of old legal documents as we organized our case. Every piece of paper represented another nail in Belinda's coffin, another step toward justice that had been delayed too long. Meanwhile, Bradley's arrest triggered a domino effect that exposed the family's dysfunction completely. Security footage led to formal charges: breaking and entering, vandalism, possession of methamphetamine paraphernalia that explained his erratic behavior and desperate need for money. "She's been using her addicted son as a weapon," Deputy Rodriguez told me during evidence review. "That's criminal exploitation of a vulnerable adult, not just property harassment." The HOA's foundation crumbled faster than stale cookies. 2 board members resigned upon learning their votes had no legal authority since the organization wasn't properly registered. Carol, Belinda's sister-in-law, faced accessory charges for knowingly participating in embezzlement. Neighbors organized legitimate meetings for the first time in decades. Then Edwin's will surfaced like a ghost delivering justice from beyond the grave. The document had been temporarily misplaced during probate. Mysteriously reappearing after Sarah's formal records request triggered county clerk investigation. The will's provision made me laugh out loud. Edwin had established a $15,000 restoration trust with explicit exclusion of any Stockworth family members from benefiting. His language was crystal clear: to protect mountain heritage from those who would exploit community resources for personal enrichment. He knew exactly what they were, the trust attorney confirmed. 60 years ago, Edwin Holbrook saw through their schemes and made sure future generations would be protected. Belinda's desperation reached pathological levels as reality closed in. Attempted bribery of county officials, fraudulent bankruptcy filing to avoid restitution, even threats against witnesses who might testify. Donald finally filed for divorce and turned state's evidence, providing 20 years of insider knowledge about his wife's criminal methodology. "I enabled her because I was afraid," Donald admitted during his police interview. "But watching what she did to you made me realize I'd become accomplice to evil." The community transformation was profound. Property values increased overnight as legitimate governance replaced tyranny. New families inquired about moving to Pinewood Estates specifically because Belinda's reign was ending. Ruby organized transparent meetings that accomplished more productive discussion in one evening than Belinda's fake committees had achieved in years. Standing in my nearly completed cabin that night, running my palm along Edwin's hand-carved mantelpiece, I understood the deeper meaning of my restoration project. This wasn't just about saving an old building. It was about proving that patience, persistence, and principle could defeat corruption and bullying. The power had shifted completely. Belinda faced criminal prosecution while I had legal authority, community support, and resources to finish my dream. Her 20-year dictatorship was collapsing, but I also understood that desperate criminals make unpredictable choices. The final confrontation was coming, and I was ready. Sarah Jules spread our battle plan across my dining table like a general preparing for the final assault. The afternoon sun streaming through my restored windows caught dust motes dancing above evidence files that could destroy Belinda's life. "Three-pronged attack," Sarah explained, her finger tracing our strategy. "Criminal prosecution for embezzlement, civil recovery for harassment damages, and injunctive relief to prevent future abuse. It's like playing chess when your opponent doesn't know the rules." The legal beauty was in the details. Tortious interference, when someone deliberately damages your property rights through systematic harassment, opens the door for punitive damages beyond simple restitution. Every security camera incident, every fake violation, every intimidation attempt became a billable offense in our favor. "Here's what homeowners never realize," Sarah continued, pulling out calculations that made my eyes water with happiness. "When HOAs operate without proper state registration, board members lose legal protection and become personally liable for every action. Belinda's not just losing HOA immunity, she's facing personal bankruptcy. That knowledge nugget was worth remembering. Always verify HOA legal status before complying with any demands. 30 seconds of online research could save thousands in illegal fines. Ruby's kitchen became our war room, the scent of her apple pie mixing with serious strategy as neighbors who'd been terrorized for years finally found their voices. Marcus created encrypted communication channels that would make the NSA jealous. Diana researched legitimate governance procedures, and Pete Kowalski offered his lumberyard for larger coalition meetings. "Most harassment victims lose because they don't document properly," Marcus explained while organizing our digital arsenal. "We've accidentally created a masterclass in destroying bullies through superior evidence collection." The Holbrook Trust Funds provided beautiful leverage. $15,000 for community heritage projects that would benefit everyone except the Stockworth family. Tangible improvements versus years of financial drain under Belinda's dictatorship. Even fence-sitting neighbors could do that math. Sarah's damage calculations were intoxicating. "Document every harassment-related cost," she advised, reviewing receipts I'd collected obsessively. "Legal fees, security systems, lost work time, even stress-related medical expenses. Washington courts award substantial damages for systematic emotional abuse, and our documentation is prosecutors' porn. The key legal principle every property owner should know: emotional distress damages can exceed actual financial losses when harassment is systematic and well documented. Keep detailed records from day one." Media strategy required surgical precision. The Mountain View Herald wanted to expose HOA corruption, but premature publicity could prejudice legal proceedings. We prepared testimonials from 12 previous Belinda victims, families driven away through manufactured violations and selective enforcement that would make Banana Republic dictators proud. Evidence speaks louder than emotion, Sarah counseled. Save righteous anger for victory celebrations. State agency coordination was proceeding like clockwork. HOA Oversight Board received comprehensive complaints. Consumer Protection launched embezzlement investigation. County Planning reviewed permit irregularities. Multiple agencies met multiple attack vectors. Even if one failed, others would succeed. Historic restoration completion leveraged trust funds for professional electrical and plumbing work, freeing me to focus on period-appropriate details. The Historical Society offered authenticity guidance while volunteers organized completion celebration as Community Liberation Festival. Pro tip every homeowner needs, Pete explained while reviewing material orders, the smell of fresh lumber filling his warehouse. Historic property restoration qualifies for state tax credits and federal heritage grants. Research first. You might get paid to preserve community character instead of paying fees to prevent it. Counterintelligence preparation addressed Belinda's predictable desperation tactics. Sarah's experience with cornered defendants suggested false accusations, evidence destruction attempts, witness intimidation. Basically every dirty trick in the sociopath playbook. Desperate criminals make dangerous choices, Sarah warned while Marcus installed additional security measures. Bankruptcy filings to avoid responsibility, fleeing jurisdiction, even physical confrontation when legal options disappear. We need contingencies for every scenario. Community governance planning focused on either HOA dissolution requiring 75% approval or removing corrupt leadership and restarting with legitimate state registration. Ruby's consensus candidacy for interim president brought mountain wisdom and zero tolerance for financial games. New bylaws would emphasize transparency, independent oversight, and equal enforcement. Previous harassment victims would serve on accountability committee, ensuring future boards couldn't repeat Belinda's reign of terror. Heritage Fund restructuring would fund genuine improvements, park benches, welcome signs, community gardens that built solidarity instead of fear. Technical documentation told our story visually. Professional photographs showed cabin transformation from neglect to beauty. Historical research proved restoration authenticity. Financial analysis demonstrated increased property values benefiting everyone. Expert testimony was arranged: contractor, historian, appraiser, community development specialist. Visual evidence wins trials, Sarah noted, reviewing before and after photos that looked like magazine spreads. Juries understand pictures better than legal arguments. Your project proves legitimate improvement conquers arbitrary harassment. Contingency planning covered every possible Belinda move. Bankruptcy, liens against personal property survive. Fled jurisdiction, asset recovery continues. Community division, core supporters maintain focus while isolating enablers. Standing in my nearly completed cabin that evening, organizing evidence by restored oil lamp light, I felt my grandfather's presence in every hand-hewn beam. This wasn't just about defeating one corrupt woman. We were proving that patience, preparation, and principle could triumph over institutional bullying. The final confrontation was scheduled. County commissioners would hear our case publicly, with media present and justice watching. After months of harassment, lies, and manipulation, Belinda would finally face consequences. I was ready to end this war. Belinda's character assassination campaign started with a phone call that made my morning coffee taste like battery acid. She'd hired some bottom-feeder private investigator to excavate my divorce records, financial history, and personal life with the thoroughness of an archaeological dig. Within days, whispers spread through Pinewood Estates about my alcohol problems, mental instability, and potential for violence. Fake social media profiles sprouted like digital weeds, posting negative reviews of my consulting work and fabricated stories about stalking behavior. The desperation smelled stronger than Ruby's overpowering rose garden fertilizer. Marcus traced the fake accounts back to IP addresses at Belinda's house. Apparently, cybercrime wasn't the Stockworth family's forte. But the most vicious attack targeted my ex-wife. Belinda called Jennifer with an elaborate sob story about harassment, implied threats, and my concerning obsessive behavior regarding the cabin project. She wanted restraining order ammunition, Jennifer explained during our evening call, voice mixing amusement with indignation. Asked about our divorce settlement, whether you'd been violent, if I felt threatened by your dangerous mountain isolation. I told her you were many things: stubborn, chronically unable to ask for directions, obsessed with vintage tools, but violent wasn't in your repertoire. Here's what I'd learned during my messy divorce about harassment campaigns. Document every attempt at character assassination because desperate opponents always overreach and create criminal liability. Jennifer's recording of Belinda's fishing expedition would become evidence of malicious interference. The key takeaway? Always record conversations with hostile parties when legally permissible. Their own words become your best evidence. Then came the mini twist that changed everything. Bradley's drug overdose landed him in county hospital, where social workers uncovered years of family dysfunction. But the real shocker was his confession. Belinda had been systematically draining his trust fund, money left by his grandfather, to finance her HOA power games and legal harassment campaigns. She told me the cabin money was really mine, Bradley admitted to investigators. Said once we got the property back, she'd restore my inheritance. I was too high to realize she'd already spent it all on lawyers and bribes. 28 years old and discovering his mother had embezzled his inheritance to fund personal vendettas. Even hardened social workers looked shocked by the psychological manipulation involved. Donald's breaking point came when Belinda tried accessing their retirement accounts for more legal funding. His divorce filing revealed 20 years of financial records showing systematic abuse of family resources for personal wars against neighbors. I enabled her because I was terrified, Donald confessed to his attorney. But watching what she's doing to that man made me realize I'd become accomplice to genuine evil. The community sabotage escalated beyond petty vandalism into systematic terrorism. Mystery nails appeared in driveways, mailboxes suffered midnight demolition, and utility services experienced accidental disruptions targeting anyone who'd shown me support. Marcus's security network captured Donald conducting nighttime operations while talking on his phone. The audio was beautiful. This obsession is destroying our family and finances, but I can't stop her when she gets like this. She's completely lost control. That recording exposed the Stockworth marriage's reality. Donald wasn't evil, just another victim too afraid of Belinda's rage to resist her increasingly criminal demands. The sound of gravel crunching under his reluctant footsteps during sabotage missions told the story of a broken man following orders. State investigators uncovered additional Heritage Fund fraud that made our initial discoveries look amateur. Fake invoices for legal consulting, heritage research, and community security assessments. All payments to Stockworth family accounts with the creativity of organized crime accountants. But Belinda's most pathetic move was attempting to bribe county officials. She offered Building Inspector Morrison cash for manufactured violations, tried paying the tax assessor to inflate my property assessment, and approached the county clerk about accidentally losing partnership dissolution documents. "Ma'am, you're describing felony bribery of public officials," Morrison told her during their recorded conversation. "I'm legally obligated to report this to law enforcement immediately." The community was splitting like kindling under pressure. Belinda organized emergency meetings for remaining loyalists, spreading panic about property values and crime rates while threatening board members who might abandon her sinking ship. "Support me or face consequences," she warned Carol during a phone conversation our surveillance captured. "I know where every skeleton is buried in this neighborhood." But legitimate neighbors were organizing hope instead of fear. Ruby's informal leadership created productive discussions about community governance, while Holbrook trust funding generated excitement about genuine improvements, playground equipment, walking trails, community gardens. The psychological pressure was clearly fracturing Belinda's grip on reality. Neighbors reported seeing her conducting surveillance from her car during odd hours, photographing shadows and having animated arguments with invisible opponents while watering plants. 20 years of ruling through fear, Ruby observed during our evening porch talk, the scent of mountain pine mixing with distant sounds of Belinda's latest meltdown. Now that intimidation isn't working, her brain's having a complete system failure. Standing in my nearly finished cabin that night, listening to Belinda's distant shouting at phantoms, I understood we were witnessing the total collapse of a petty dictator whose empire of lies was crumbling into dust. The final public confrontation was scheduled, and she was already defeated. She just didn't know it yet. Belinda's final desperate measures began the moment she posted bail using every dollar in their family savings. Within hours, she violated her restraining order with the systematic persistence of someone whose grip on reality had snapped completely. Her first scheme was recruiting contractors through Bradley's criminal connections. Apparently, unemployed addicts were more reliable than HOA board members. The plan was beautifully stupid. Hire tweakers to create accidental damage during late-night utility repairs, while she established alibis at community meetings. But Marcus's security evolution had created a digital fortress. Hidden cameras with night vision motion sensors and audio recording that captured 3 strung-out vandals approaching my property at midnight. The footage was prosecution gold: license plates, faces, and the bag of methamphetamine they dropped while fleeing from motion-activated floodlights. Conspiracy to commit vandalism using known criminals, Deputy Rodriguez explained while reviewing evidence. She's building her own federal case file. The environmental fraud attempt revealed Belinda's complete disconnection from logic. She filed false EPA reports claiming my septic restoration disturbed critical wetlands, requiring immediate evacuation and federal intervention. Apparently, she'd spent sleepless nights researching environmental law with the dedication of a manic graduate student. The EPA inspector who arrived Thursday looked like he'd drawn the short straw. "Ma'am, this property sits on a mountainside 15 miles from the nearest wetlands," he told Belinda while she frantically gestured at my perfectly legal septic system. The smell of her desperation was stronger than the fresh pine needles scattered across my driveway. But here's the mini twist that changed the game completely. While Belinda focused on destroying my property, I'd been quietly building relationships with other HOA abuse victims across the region. Sarah's legal network had connected me with 12 families in neighboring counties who'd suffered similar harassment campaigns. "Your case broke something loose," explained Janet Morrison from Pine Valley Estates. "Reading about your fight gave us courage to document our own experiences and contact authorities about systematic targeting." The revelation was stunning. Belinda's tactics weren't unique to Pinewood Estates. A pattern of HOA fraud stretched across 3 counties, involving forced property sales, embezzled funds, and strategic intimidation. We weren't fighting one corrupt woman. We were exposing an entire network of community parasites. Meanwhile, Donald's cooperation with prosecutors revealed 20 years of systematic theft that made our case look modest. 12 families driven from Pinewood through manufactured violations, property values artificially suppressed for below-market sales to cronies, and community funds diverted to personal accounts totaling nearly $200,000. "She convinced me we were protecting property values," Donald confessed during recorded interviews. "I didn't realize we were running a criminal enterprise that destroyed people's lives." The tax assessment scam showed Belinda's final grasp at financial revenge. She attempted bribing County Assessor Linda Jules, no relation to Sarah, to increase my property taxes from reasonable $2,400 to impossible $15,000 annually, claiming my restoration created a commercial resort facility. "Lady, you're describing felony bribery during an active criminal investigation where you're the primary suspect," Assessor Jules told her while secretly recording their conversation. "Do you understand how insane that sounds?" But my counterpunch was already in motion. The regional coalition of HOA abuse victims had attracted media attention from Seattle television stations interested in investigating systematic corruption. Our documentation became the foundation for a week-long investigative series about property rights and community governance abuse. Homeowners Fight Back: How One Man's Cabin Restoration Exposed Regional HOA Fraud Network became must-see television across Washington state. Belinda's harassment campaign had accidentally created the publicity nightmare she'd feared most. The community transformation was remarkable to witness. Ruby organized legitimate meetings that accomplished more productive discussion in single evenings than Belinda's fake committees had achieved in years. The sweet scent of actual democracy filled meeting rooms as neighbors discovered they could solve problems through cooperation instead of intimidation. Property management companies terminated Pinewood Estates contracts to avoid liability. Insurance providers canceled coverage for criminal board members, and remaining HOA loyalists resigned faster than rats abandoning a sinking ship. Belinda's final act of desperation was attempting to frame me for drug possession. She planted methamphetamine in my mailbox while calling anonymous tips about suspicious drug activity to Sheriff's Department. The plan might have worked if Marcus hadn't installed cameras covering every approach to my property. High-definition footage showed Belinda creeping around my mailbox at 3 a.m., carefully planting evidence while muttering about teaching lessons and protecting family honor. The audio captured her complete psychological breakdown, 20 minutes of incoherent rambling about conspiracies, inheritance rights, and imaginary enemies. Planting drugs to frame someone is called evidence tampering and filing false police reports, Deputy Rodriguez explained while arresting her for the 3rd time. "Ma'am, you're building your own life sentence." Standing on my completed cabin porch that evening, watching news crews pack up their equipment after documenting Belinda's latest arrest, I understood this story had grown beyond personal vindication. We'd created a template for communities fighting institutional corruption, and proven that individual courage could expose systematic abuse. The public hearing was tomorrow. After months of escalating harassment and criminal behavior, justice would finally be served with cameras rolling and the entire region watching. Belinda had destroyed herself completely, and the whole world would witness her final downfall. The county courthouse hearing room buzzed with anticipation like a beehive before swarming. Standing room only, with overflow crowds streaming live video on phones outside. The scent of nervous perspiration mixed with old wood polish and courthouse coffee as 3 regional TV stations positioned cameras for maximum drama. County commissioners sat elevated like judges at history's tribunal. District Attorney Patricia Wells arranged evidence boxes that could sink battleships. The state HOA oversight representative had flown from Olympia specifically for this spectacle, while FBI agents occupied front row seats with notebooks ready. Ruby testified first, her weathered mountain voice cutting through courtroom silence. 20 years of fear disguised as community leadership, she began, the microphone amplifying decades of suppressed anger. Belinda Stockworth transformed our neighborhood into a terror state where families lived in constant dread of manufactured violations. Marcus followed with digital devastation. 47 documented incidents displayed on courthouse projectors. Security footage showed Belinda planting evidence, coordinating vandalism, and conducting surveillance like a deranged private investigator. Audible gasps rippled through packed galleries as her criminal methodology played in high definition. Diana's voice broke reading impact statements from 12 destroyed families. Financial ruin, forced relocations, emotional trauma. The human wreckage of Belinda's 20-year dictatorship laid bare before cameras and community witnesses. Pete Kowalski connected regional corruption dots. She poisoned honest contractors' reputations across 3 counties, he declared, pointing at Belinda with carpenter's accuracy. Economic terrorism disguised as consumer protection, destroying livelihoods to maintain control. Then Belinda made her entrance in Orange County jumpsuit, handcuffed and diminished. The woman who'd terrorized neighbors for decades looked like a broken marionette, strings cut by reality. Her court-appointed attorney resembled someone who'd rather defend serial killers than hopeless cases. "I demand to address these fabricated accusations," Belinda shrieked, her voice cracking like old paint. Judge Harrison reluctantly permitted her statement while cameras captured every unhinged word. What followed was 15 minutes of televised psychological collapse. Belinda ranted about urban liberal conspiracies, stolen heritage, and corrupt government persecution of honest leadership. She accused commissioners of bribery, claimed federal agents were targeting traditional values, and insisted the cabin belonged to Bradley despite mountainous evidence proving otherwise. "That consultant destroyed everything my family built," she screamed, spittle flying as hysteria peaked. "Some divorced outsider can't steal our mountain heritage with lawyers and lies." The courtroom sat mesmerized as complete mental breakdown played before 300 witnesses and rolling cameras. Even hardened deputies looked uncomfortable watching someone's sanity disintegrate in real time. Sarah Jules's presentation was prosecutorial poetry. Partnership dissolution papers displayed Billy Stockworth's signature, abandoning all property claims. Edwin's will explicitly excluded Stockworth family members. Financial audits revealed $47,000 embezzled for personal luxury, disguised as community expenses. "Overwhelming, irrefutable evidence of systematic criminal enterprise," Sarah concluded with surgical precision. "This case demonstrates why property owners need legal protection from institutional abuse masquerading as governance." District Attorney Wells announced charges that silenced the room: federal racketeering, mail fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, evidence tampering, and criminal harassment. Combined sentences potentially reaching 20 years plus $500,000 fines and full community restitution. This criminal enterprise targeted vulnerable homeowners across multiple counties, Wells stated. Community governance cannot provide cover for personal enrichment and systematic neighbor abuse. But the mic drop moment belonged to me. When Judge Harrison requested closing remarks, I stood facing Belinda directly, mountain silence filling the courtroom. "Mrs. Stockworth," I said, my voice carrying to every corner, "you spent months claiming I was destroying your community. But the real truth is this. Your 20-year reign of terror poisoned everything good about mountain life. You didn't lose a family inheritance. You lost the right to terrorize your neighbors. This restoration project didn't ruin Pinewood Estates. It saved everyone from you." The packed courthouse exploded in thunderous applause that deputies couldn't contain. Reporters scribbled frantically while cameras captured Belinda's final lunge toward me, screaming, "You destroyed everything," before security tackled her to the floor. Judge Harrison's gavel finally restored order as he announced federal charges filed, assets seized, and permanent restraining orders issued. Belinda was remanded without bail, her dictatorship officially terminated, while she sobbed uncontrollably in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, celebration erupted across mountain communities as neighbors hugged, cried, and shared freedom stories. Documentary crews interviewed dozens describing their first taste of legitimate democracy in decades. Local news anchors called it David versus Goliath with security cameras and spreadsheets. Ruby grabbed my hand as cameras rolled. "Son, you didn't just save that cabin," she said, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. "You saved all of us." Standing in afternoon sunlight with my completed cabin visible across the valley, surrounded by neighbors I'd helped liberate from institutional terrorism, I understood we'd accomplished something bigger than personal vindication. We'd proven that individual courage, community solidarity, and meticulous documentation could destroy corruption and restore justice to poisoned places. The sound of genuine laughter echoing across mountain air, probably the first honest joy Pinewood Estates had heard in 20 years, told me everything about what we'd accomplished together. 6 months later, Belinda's sentencing made headlines from Seattle to Spokane. 7 years federal prison, 4 years state concurrent, $750,000, total fines, and restitution. Judge Martinez's words echoed beyond the courthouse. Your criminal enterprise transformed community governance into personal terrorism. This sentence reflects society's zero tolerance for institutional abuse. The scent of justice smelled sweeter than mountain wildflowers. Donald's cooperation earned probation and a fresh start in eastern Washington, working construction and attending therapy for 2 decades of psychological manipulation. Bradley completed rehab, found purpose as addiction counselor in Missoula, and cut all ties with his toxic mother. Sometimes the best family reunions involve permanent separation. Corrupt officials face their own reckoning. County Clerk Morrison, 3 years federal time. Building Inspector Davidson, 2 years plus lifetime public employment ban. Tax Assessor Richardson, heavy fines and professional license revocation. The message resonated across Washington state. Corruption carries consequences, regardless of connections. Pinewood Estates transformed into something Edwin Holbrook would recognize. Ruby's interim presidency established transparent governance with rotating leadership and ironclad term limits. Property values jumped 28% as legitimate management replaced extortion. 18 new families moved in seeking well-governed communities with authentic mountain character instead of manufactured drama. The Heritage Fund's resurrection became local legend. Recovered embezzlement money, $47,000 plus penalties, funded genuine improvements. The Edwin Holbrook Memorial Workshop teaching traditional building skills to teenagers. Community pavilion where neighbors actually talked instead of plotting. And organic gardens where families grew vegetables instead of grievances. My cabin became unexpected regional attraction, featured in Better Homes and Gardens as David Beats Goliath Historic Restoration Edition. The workshop program connected mountain youth with craftsmanship heritage their grandparents had nearly forgotten, teaching patience and precision in an instant gratification world. Sarah Jules's expertise gained national recognition through our case citations in 23 subsequent HOA prosecutions. Her Property Rights Defense Handbook became required reading for harassment victims, proving that systematic documentation defeats systematic bullying every time. Netflix's Cabin Conspiracy documentary reached 2.8 million viewers, sparking national conversation about HOA reform. Media coverage included 60 Minutes, Reader's Digest, and This Old House. Apparently, David versus Goliath stories with spreadsheets and security cameras make compelling television. Personal healing surprised me most. Dr. Emily Watson, the Historical Society curator who'd helped research Edwin's legacy, became my partner in preservation and life. Her mountain heritage expertise complemented my restoration obsession, creating partnership that honored past while building future together. Even my ex-wife Jennifer admitted Emily was a significant upgrade during our surprisingly cordial Christmas call. Regional impact exceeded expectations. 3 neighboring communities requested HOA problem assistance, leading to Pacific Northwest Property Rights Alliance formation. Marcus and Diana launched consulting business helping harassment victims document cases professionally. Pete's Lumberyard grew 40% through referrals from customers who'd witnessed integrity triumph over intimidation. The Mountain Justice Workshop series taught hundreds of families practical skills, documentation techniques, legal research, coalition building. Our key distribution: Know Your Rights, HOA Powers and Limitations. Simple knowledge preventing thousands in illegal fees and manufactured violations. Ruby's county commission election on transparency platform proved community activism creates lasting political change. Her rapid response team for HOA corruption ensures future victims won't fight alone against institutional bullies. But the legacy I treasure most is simpler. Standing on my porch this golden evening, watching neighborhood children play safely in streets where fear once ruled, listening to genuine laughter echo across mountain air, I understand restoration's deepest meaning. The wooden sign reads, Holbrook Heritage Cabin, Eston 1871, restored 2025, protected forever. But real preservation isn't about logs or legal precedent. It's proving that ordinary people armed with patience, principle, and community support can defeat any tyrant. My grandfather's carpentry wisdom applies to justice. Good work requires time, son. Measure twice, cut once, and never let bullies push you around. Sometimes the most important restoration projects aren't buildings. They're restoring faith in fairness, community, and people who refuse surrendering dreams to petty dictators. The coffee tastes better when you're drinking it in freedom. Share your HOA nightmare stories in the comments. Your experience might help someone else fighting similar battles for basic dignity and property rights. Subscribe for more stories about beating institutional bullies through courage, preparation, and the legal strategies that actually work when patience meets persistence. Every sunset over these mountains reminds me, sometimes fixing what's broken requires tearing down what's corrupt and building something beautiful in its place.